we live in a culture that probably wants to know, why should I do this? If I do this, what do I get? That sort of thing out of it. It doesn't quite work that way, but there certainly are some benefits for each of us to practicing presence.
One of the things that you'll find out when you begin to practice presence, when you move into presence, uh, the first thing that happens is the astonishment that there's something there waiting for you.
Mm,
And the more you practice presence, the more you realize, holy mackerel, everything is waiting for me. You thought once upon a time it was only God, perhaps. But once you start to practice, you start to find that whatever your small idea, and it will be a small idea of what God is, trust me, no matter how big your idea of God is, it's not big enough. So when you first think you're going to meet with God, uh, and it will happen, the numinous will come. You will have this experience of presence and you'll know you're moving into presence because the smaller parts of you that have its judgments and resentments and anxious ideas about what ought to be, uh, it's terror of not belonging, of not being loved. That's the small self's great concern.
mm,
Those things start to fall away, and what comes in it with in place of it is the sense of belonging. I'm part of this world. Uh, Deeply, I am beloved. I'm loved and I love. I have full heart capacity. And that starts to have its way with you. And we call that the virtues. The virtues bring up to life in the midst of all that. And they're yours. They're your virtue. There's no virtue that you don't already own in your DNA. It was a gift to us, the Imago Dei. And so those virtues start to spring up and you find yourself in the midst of a way of life, even if it's for the moment, that's bigger and broader and more powerful than it was a moment ago. That's the clear before and after that Jim talks about. And it won't last forever, but it will have its momentum for whatever time you're able to stay with it. I think if we could stay with it, it would just, you know,
yeah,
we'd be walking on water,
right.
and we wouldn't sink. Peter got a few steps, so he had it. And then, so it's not impossible to imagine that we can do it, but just don't, just don't give up because you only go a few steps. That's the way of things. That's the
Right.
way of this, uh, apparently the human condition. We're the only part of creation that can deny itself. And so when we get lost in that part that's denial, we sink, so to speak. The fear comes, the anxiety comes, the terror of, do we really belong here? Am I making any difference? Is there any good in me? Am I loved or lovable? And that's the kind of, uh, you know, the address of presence is to silence
Yeah.
all of that so that we can make room for apparently what's been waiting for us all our life. And much of the time we've denied the possibility that it could be that great and that wonderful and that amazing in me. In me, I am love. I am forgiveness. I am compassion. And as we give way to that and we practice that, it becomes a way of life. You're not trying to be good anymore or trying to be lovable. I remember those days, and I call that, along with David White, the gospel of despair. I was always trying
Mm,
so damn hard, Brian,
yeah.
to be acceptable and to be loved and to be good and to be worthy. But that's really the false self trying to be better than be the best self that it can be, but it's just always going to be limited. It's a constructed self, um, and so the deep self, when it starts to come alive, it knows all these things. It lacks nothing, um, and I watch it break in on my life now because of the practices, because of my longing, honoring that longing for a lifetime. I see it breaking in all the time, and I'm astonished by it.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, and especially watching people's reaction to it. That astonishes me
yeah,
because they can see it too, and not just people. The more than human world uh, seems to know that I've decided to show up. so so all of a sudden, it's showing up to me, and
right.
that's the deep surprise of presence. Is you show up, and all of a sudden, everything is showing up to you and honoring the fact that you've arrived, as it were, into the presence.
Yeah, I really hear what you're saying. One of the ways, and I honor the way that you say that it's changed you, and it keeps poking its head out and shows up in different ways. Because for me, it shows up in a lot more. I say yes a lot more.
Mhm,
And it's a yes of acceptance, and it's also a yes of knowing that I don't have to wait around for the resources or something that I was expecting, like, yes to this now. Yes, this is possible. Yes, you can do this, or, yes, you can hold this space. And then you and I have both been part of workshops where we invite men into the practice of presence and reading, choosing presence, and we talk about these and we hear about different reactions. I mean, one of the common ones that come into mind, recently is one of the men in our workshop, we've actually published an article, his testimonial on our website. He talked about anxiety and how anxiousness was filling up his life, and how
mhm.
through breathing practices, and how through learning the practice of presence. And he talked specifically about how powerful it is for him to put his hand on his heart as he's practicing this meditation, even skin to skin. I think he mentions is so important to him. So yeah, I guess I would just yeah, maybe do you have any, thing you would like to add, or stories that you've heard, or share of experience of people, what they've learned um, about the benefits of their practice, or things that you've witnessed and encountered?
Well, I do want to say that it takes courage, um, because as this man you're describing here, uh, we've practiced our whole lives the other side of this equation,
Mm,
and it's powerful, and it's got a momentum that is undeniable, and it's a momentum that creates the anti virtues. So if you want to know why the whole world is askew, it's because that's the momentum.
right.
And so it takes courage to step out of that. Because the truth is, the small self is terrified of stepping out of that way, even though it's not working well. It's all it knows. And it doesn't know what's going to happen to itself if if it if it stops being itself.
Mm,
It's pretty sure it will be obliterated, and it will. To die is the necessity to the small self. In Goethe's poem, The Holy Longing, the last line, he says, and so long as you haven't experienced this, and so long as you haven't experienced this, to die, and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. And so, And so long as you haven't experienced this, to die, and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. And he's talking about this very thing, that you have to die to that smaller version of yourself that's always lamenting. that it didn't get enough or it won't get enough. Scarcity is the name of the game, and it's terrified. And so it's grabbing and positioning itself, posturing itself defensively in the world. It's
Mm,
always guarded. It's a small, it has a very small vision of hope. And so he says you have to die to that. Goethe is making a, a statement there. The holy longing for something more profound will demand that you have to die to the momentum of your life as it already is.
mm,
And and so in these practices that we're doing here, we're trying to create another momentum. And it takes courage because everything, nearly everything, is demanding our attention, distracting us from that possibility. So even in spiritual settings, I have people tell me, "Well, we really don't have time to pray. Let's just get to the meeting," you
yeah,
know, or some version of that.
yeah,
We'll do prayer later. Right,
right.
right.
You
That
know,
just means that whatever you're about to do, you're not gonna dream yourself out of
yeah,
the normal way, the usual way of doing business.
right.
So, uh,
It's like you were saying, it's so counterintuitive to our culture. One of the things I loved when I was in 12-step rooms is people would say, "Don't just do something, sit there." And, that would hit me like a ton of bricks, especially the first few times I heard it, because it's just such a different way of thinking than how I'd been conditioned. And to even talk about the practice of presence and use and say, well, what are the benefits to doing this? That almost seems like using the wrong language or the old language, because I think you don't, from experience, that you're not sure what the possibilities will be if you are be able to come to stillness and become present. you know, it, it's not really a prescriptive practice. It is and it isn't. It's like if you do it on a regular basis, if you try to in the morning do the morning practice, if you try to on a regular basis throughout the day bring in the breath and invite in stillness, that is a prescriptive practice. But what really arises, you never know. I mean, you do not know what's going to come out of that stillness. It's
no, but the practice does create a momentum.
mm,
If if we're doing yeah, so I always have to have qualifiers. If you can still the monkey mind and you can fall into a posture where you're seeing and listening from the heart, this creates a momentum.
yeah,
And I think there are 1,000 ways that you can create that momentum. I really do. But they all involve the same thing at its core. And that is, as you mentioned, stopping what you're doing, what the small you is doing, and stopping what you're becoming while you do it. That's a poem, a line from David White sometimes. But you you have to stop. So don't, I forget how you said it. Don't just do something, sit there.
mhm,
Yeah. But it's not sit there and just think more, because
right.
that doesn't work either. We got a lot of people at home sitting in their chair and they're in trouble. Oh, easy answers are really not gonna do it for us. It's almost always the deep knowing, and you'll know because you'll feel yourself shaking your head at it, and you'll feel yourself resisting it
Mm,
because the small self will resist. So I'm really struggling. Somebody will say to me as a pastor with some relationship or whatever. And I go, well, so what are you struggling about? Well, it's this and that, and they'll say whatever it is, but they're usually talking about resentments or lack of forgiveness or an inability to have any kind of compassion for whoever it is that they're talking about. They're
right,
blaming them for everything. And, they might be a butthead. There's no doubt about that. But the virtues have no attachments to that.
right.
they don't virtues don't give a rip
Right.
about the the ideas of the small self because it can absorb everything. It has this attitude like, well, I can forgive that.
Yeah.
Well, I can have compassion for that. Uh, I can love that, even so. Bring it on. It
Mm.
is fire, uh, the virtues when they're set loose in us. And I find that when we give way to that, um, the transforming reality already comes along with it, hand in hand. It's a package deal. And this whole idea of trying so hard, I think that's also a mistake. Um, it's really surrendering and giving way. And so this person that's over there rehearsing all their resentments and all the reasons why they're having trouble with this other person, if I say to them, well, have you considered just forgiving them? Well, I've forgiven them. I'll say, but I'm looking at them. I'm like, no.
Right.
But that's the spiritual work. And sometimes I guess it does help to have someone mirror back to you that no, I don't think so. but, but even so, most of the time they leave my office and now they blame me too because I didn't get on their
Yeah.
blame game. But anyway, uh,
No, and what you're saying is really good because I was, you were talking, I was going, yeah, if you're getting into this to realize some sort of immediate benefit or a bene a me you will find these things. You will find benefits and even a maybe a measurable benefit in some way, but maybe it's just helpful to journal. It seems like what you were talking about with even the counseling of somebody is we need to bring our awareness to different things in our
mhm.
lives, our resentments, whatever it is, and that's what this practice really allows, and, I do wanna add one more thing here is, a few years ago, you were on a video, for the organization Lumen, men's work, and you talked about, having gone to an MROP, and one of the phrases that you said that really stuck out to me, "I've checked in, but I haven't checked out." And that to me is a profound phrase because it's got many, many different levels of meaning from the literal, to many other levels. But I think, in the context of practicing presence, I think that's what kinda keeps me, attached to this in a
Yeah.
way is that by just showing up and being present, I don't check out. I stay checked in, and what that has allowed me to do in addition to the acceptance is by saying yes, I've inadvertently or not even been aware of saying yes to community, yes to relationship, yes to my life, in ways that I had not heretofore done. It's not easy, but I was running around busy, busy, distracted, distracted, saying, no, not this, no, not that, no. And I was really just living on the surface of things. And once I checked in and refused to check out, that's
Yep.
when the yes and the accepting grew for me. So, yeah, Jim, thank you so much. And, is there anything else that you would like to add here?
No, I just want to encourage anyone who is discouraged. Remember, the goal is not to get good at the practice. The goal is to get good at surrendering, placing yourself in a posture where longing meets that deep. There is a longing on the other side of your longing. I guarantee you. That's what you're going to meet. And I think of this line from Antonio Machado, the great Spanish poet. He says, anyone who moves on, even a little, anyone, anyone who moves on, even a little, walks like Jesus upon the water. Stay at it.
Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it.